Hello and welcome to our Webtalk celebrating the 5-year anniversary of the Paris Agreement. Well, and talking about is there any reason for celebration? My name is Monika Langthaler and I'm the director of the Schwarzenegger Climate Initiative. And today I'm very glad and very proud that the father, the architect, the person who made the Paris Agreement possible, former COP president of 21 and former Foreign Minister of France is joining us today. A very warm welcome, Monsieur Fabius.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we want to talk with you about the past, about the present, but also, of course, about the near future. But before we start talking, I have a little surprise for you and a message from a close friend. Let's watch.
Laurent, Fabius, my dear friend, today I want to congratulate you because it's the 5-year anniversary. In 2015, you've negotiated this unbelievable agreement where the whole world came together and signed on to making a commitment to reducing greenhouse gases. And you worked on it for years. And you were so dedicated. You brought so much energy to the whole thing. That was a historic moment. And then you did it. You were responsible for that. And so I just want to say congratulations. And to me, of course, you're a hero. You're a hero not only in the environmental movement and being a heroic environmental crusader, but you're also a hero in the political arena. You're a great politician, and you are a great public servant, and you're a great leader, and you're a great friend, most of all. So thank you very much for all of those things. For me, you're just the greatest. And that's why I love you, and that's why I congratulate you. And let's just move forward with that great energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arnold. If I may answer.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, I am moved by what Arnold, my dear friend, said, because he is Arnold. And because what he didn't say is that he has been very efficient for the preparation of COP21 and Paris Agreement. Obviously, it was not possible for a man, even with an organization, to achieve the result that we have achieved. It was made possible because Arnold and some other friends have supported us, and because of their capability, have shown to the world that it was not in the interest of this one or that one, but in the interest of everybody. Therefore, and since that moment, we are very dear and close friends. And therefore, it's not to you, Arnold, to thank me, but it's my role to thank you for all what you have done and what you are doing today. And I would add personally that I'm very happy to see you every day younger and younger. So.
I'm sure he loves to hear that. But maybe you can tell us some insights of these really tough negotiations 5 years ago. I mean, Arnold just said it. It was a groundbreaking and is still a groundbreaking agreement, and we all knew that all these different parties had so different positions. So what was the secret that you brought them together to a successful solution? And having now these 5 years experience, what is your resume after these 5 years?
Well, coming back to the so-called secret, I would say that first, what was very important was a very hard work. You know, before Paris, there have been many attempts to reach an agreement, but it was not possible. And it was made easier in 2015 for some reasons I will explain in a minute. But first, because of an enormous work. You know, it's not possible to catch a deal with all the countries of the world, because if only one country, even the smallest, says no, there is no agreement. And it's not possible, even within a fortnight of the COP itself, to catch the agreement if you don't have prepared it very closely before. And it was what I did with my team during 3 years. It means too that therefore the first word is work, hard work, preparatory work. And it was true in Paris, it's true today for preparing next COP26. The second word is trust. You know, we had to listen to everybody. It doesn't mean that you can accept the ideas of everybody because you have to build a compromise. But when you have to get an agreement, not only with states, which were decisive, but also with civil society, with companies, and so on and so forth, you have to listen really to everybody and to make people know that you have listened to them. Therefore, it's this idea of trust. It would not have been possible to be successful if the different participants have thought that I had the final, agreement in my pocket, and at the last minute I will give it to them. No, you know, the Paris Agreement, it's not a novel. It's 29 articles and 140 paragraphs of decision. And if you want to coin that, you have to build trust. Therefore, it's the second thing. And the third one, after work and trust, is to be ambitious. Because it would have been possible to catch a deal at a minimum level, but it would have been useless. And therefore, we had to decide the famous 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees, the famous nationally determined contribution every 5 years enhanced, and so on and so forth. Therefore, it is the way that it has been possible. I would add more secretly that nothing replaces the personal touch. You know, to a certain extent, states are monsters. But if you are able to convince the leaders, the political leaders, the business leaders, the NGO leaders, the youngster, things can be changed. And I remember the last weekend, that will be my final comment. Last weekend before the COP itself, I took my plane and paid a visit. It was not so good for CO2 emissions, I must admit. But in the same weekend, I paid a visit to the president of South Africa, to the prime minister of India, and to the president of Brazil, because I was not sure of their behavior, and they were decisive. Not only US, Obama at the time, not only China, obviously, not only Europe, and so many people, but these three ones. And when you are speaking directly, things can change. And it's true, it was true yesterday, and it is true today. Nothing replaces the patience and the personal touch.
Absolutely. I can very well understand what you said. And you also said, of course, that ambition is one of the key factors. We all thought that 2020 might be a year full of ambitions when we talked maybe 1 year ago. But then 2020 developed completely different with a pandemic. States are still struggling with this virus and not really combating greenhouse gas emissions. So what does still go wrong? What would be your advice, looking at the present situation, that we really increase our ambition and do much more than these last 5 years?
What was the strength of the planet in Paris? Union of every single country in the world. Because at the end of the day, there was 195 countries, heads of state and government, who said, yes, this asset, this planet, since 5 years, well, it broke into pieces for different reasons. And one of the reasons Arnold knows perfectly well. I mean, let's be clear, President Trump, not mainly in US, because many people in US, many companies, many universities, many governors have said, no, we are keeping on fighting climate change. But in the rest of the world, it was highly detrimental. And I've seen that. Because many countries who have signed Paris, but who were not so enthusiastic, if you are the head of a country which lives on gas or oil, on coal, and if you sign Paris, well, it means that at the end of the day, an important share of your resources now does no longer exist in a few years. And these countries, and I have some, you have some precise names in your head, like me, they've said, well, if the US president is not accepting efforts, why we should accept efforts? And therefore, we had this situation during 4 or 5 years where this planet, political planet, unity planet, was no longer united. And since a few weeks, and I'm careful when I say that, things are somewhat moving in that planet because of the statements of the Chinese president, because of the commitments of the Japanese prime minister, because of the president of South Korea, because of the election of a new president in US, who obviously has not the same position. One has to be careful because governments are essential, but they are not alone. There will be resistances, all that is difficult. And the real situation today is that we are not in line with Paris objective. But things are changing in the right direction. And now many things will depend on civil society and on a new unity that we must work for of these governments.
This is really interesting because this underlines that the election of the new President-elect Joe Biden is really a glimmer of hope, and especially also his announcement that your former colleague John Kerry will be his climate advisor and his climate ambassador hopefully changes the situation in the international debate. And so I understand that you think that the US is really important for this international debate and for moving forward to a better future, that other countries think again that this is really on the top of the political agenda and that they have to do more.
Sure, US are very important. The commitments that the elect president has taken are very impressive. Now, I'm a realistic man, a pragmatic man, and I know that it will not be easy because there can be political opposition within the US, because there will be resistances of some economic sectors, and because also US initiatives are very important, but they have to be humble at the same time because we need a general agreement. And for instance, the active participation of China is decisive. Not only China, but also poor countries. Because if, imagine, and it's a theme which is very important for Arnold and myself, it's not only the question of rich countries, it's also the question of poor countries, developing countries. If you are a country in Africa, you are not polluting at all, but you are the first one to have the consequences, bad consequences of global warming. And you don't have finance, and you don't have technology. And if it is not possible to have these elements, where do they go? Now, and therefore, and the fact that my friend John Kerry has been appointed is very important because he knows pretty well this question and is really committed. Now, there's one point that you raised, and to which I didn't, and that I didn't touch, but which is very important, is the question of the virus. Okay, many things were scheduled to take place in 2020, and it was not possible because of the virus. Okay, and now it's postponed to 2021. But there is what I call a giga paradox with this story of the coronavirus. Why? It's a very serious problem. It kills people, it destroys many elements, and therefore, a great number of governments have taken decisions, strong decisions, dramatic decisions in the field of economy, in the field of social, in the field of freedom, in order to answer not only to the virus, but the consequences of the virus. Okay, and they're right to do so. But, and I insist on the but, when you are considering global warming, to a certain extent, it's much deeper than coronavirus. And there is no vaccine for global warming. And in terms of health and dead people, it's much more, and I hope that I don't hurt you, it's much more when you add the different years, that the coronavirus. And in spite of that, we, all of us, we don't do against climate warming what we have decided to do against the virus. And we have to think about that and to take decisions. And in particular, in different countries, there are recovery plans.
Yes, especially in the European Union. Interesting, just as we are talking, the European Union is actually discussing and struggling for a even tougher target to implement until 2030. So my question would be, what, or can we be optimistic, or do you believe that in the next 10 years that we can achieve what we have not achieved in these last 30 years?
Once more, there is a problem with the image, but it will be solved within a few seconds. But I understand that you see me. Okay. You're right. You're right. What I meant is that we are building recovery plans everywhere. They must not be brown recovery plans, traditional recovery plans. They have to be green recovery plans in order that our money, public or private, goes to new energy, new techniques, the world of the future and not the world of the past. Now, the question that you raised is, can we change things within 10 years? How is it possible? Things are changing. We shall have, when is it? Next Saturday, a meeting was by video with a number of people, which is chaired by UN, by UK, and by France, and gathering many people who have to declare what will be their contribution to a solution in the next months and next year. And I think that there is a new element which is very positive. You have seen that many people, many governments, and many companies are working with a long-term horizon, 2050. It's what most of them call net zero emission, carbon neutrality. Therefore, you have a long-term perspective. You have a mid-term perspective, which is 2030. And it is what we call, in our so-called expert language, the nationally determined contribution. Not enough, not high enough, but a growing number of states and companies putting precisely what are their objectives for 2030. And now, with these recovery plans, we have the short-term horizon for 2020, 2023. Therefore, things are going in the right direction. You have a long-term perspective, a middle-term perspective, and a short-term perspective. And stemming from that, both the companies, the states, the non-state actors, the individual can build something. If you want to improve a situation, you have to draw a design to people, a great design, to say to them, that is the point that I want to touch in the long term, in the middle term, in the short term. And it is the way I will use in order to go into that direction. It's true for a family, it's true for a business, it's true for a state. And these elements now are growing and growing. Unfortunately, there are still a lot of catastrophe. The temperature is still warmer and warmer. But I think that if the sensation of urgency and necessity is more and more deeply felt, we can and we must change things. And now the motto is action, action. Now we know what are the objectives. They are clearly designed in Paris, but we have to act and to deliver.
Absolutely, Monsieur Fabius. Thank you so much for this interesting insight, and thank you so much that you give us also this optimistic insight for these next years to come. Thank you, Monsieur Fabius.
Thank you very much.